Season 1 of The Walking Dead, Daryl Dixon, is now concluded, and Carol is back. That's the big teaser we get at the end of the episode. Very exciting. Given the phone call last week, it's not all that surprising that Carol would show up. We already knew based on Comic-Con, and even prior to that, we saw set photos of Melissa McBride on set for Season 2. We knew she was coming back, but we got to see her in the flesh in this episode. That's great to see. It was a very exciting scene, and she's trying to track down Daryl, so I'm sure she's going to end up in France. And overall, it was a pretty good finale episode. This is the first finale we've gotten from Walking Dead since the series finale that really felt like a conclusive kind of finale episode with some big action scenes. And there's a big decision point that Daryl has at the end of the episode. Is he going to go home? Is he going to stay in France? We get to see that play out in this episode. So overall, it was pretty solid. I enjoyed most of this episode. There's a couple little things here and there. The main villain, Cordon, there's a big surprising decision that he makes that I honestly kind of question a little bit. But we'll get to that when we get to it in the breakdown. But overall, I think that this finale cements the Daryl Dixon spinoff Season 1 as perhaps the best Walking Dead spinoff yet. I think it's very solid. I think it's above Dead City. Dead City had a lot of momentum at the beginning, and it kind of lost its way a little bit towards the end. I don't think we had that problem with this series. It was pretty consistent. I would give it a solid, as a Walking Dead fan, I give it an 8 out of 10. It's probably the best we've seen in a while. But I don't know if this is good enough to revive the franchise to its former glory. For normie fans who are kind of lost along the way with The Walking Dead, I'm not sure that this show is going to be good enough to make them come back. I would love that. I would love for Walking Dead to be as good as it once was. But it remains to be seen, right? So I think that this is really good for Walking Dead fans. If you're a hardcore fan like myself, you're going to love this. I'm not sure if it's going to bring people back. We shall see. But with that, I think we're going to break into the breakdown. We'll start at the beginning of the episode. I was surprised when this episode begun that we started with footage of the beach of Normandy from World War II. I instantly recognized the uniforms, and I'm sure that that's what it was. I thought it was just a further illusion of Americans in Paris sacrificing their life for the cause, but it turns out there's an even more intimate connection than that with Daryl, and it turns out that he has some family history with World War II. His grandfather was on the beaches of Normandy. I love this aspect of the episode. It was unexpected for me, and I think it's a perfect fit. So we'll get back to that later in the episode. But I thought it was a nice touch here to have this shot, this kind of teaser scene. And I'm guessing maybe this is Daryl's grandfather. Maybe this final image that we close in on. I can't really make it out in the footage that I have here on the streaming service. It's a little grainy for me, so I can't really see what's on his dog tag there, but it's very possible that this says Dixon here. I don't know. Somebody with maybe a 4K monitor might be able to see, but maybe I'll watch it on cable tonight and we'll see if it says that. Well, we start off with this scene where we left off with Daryl, and we are in the arena. Daryl is getting attacked by a very fast zombie, and it was kind of fun to see Daryl ducking and weaving. I've talked about before how this whole arena concept is a trope in Walking Dead. We had it with the governor, and we had it with Jayus and the trash people, Rick fighting the Spike Walker. We've had variations of this concept many times, so it's a bit of a cliche. But honestly, it was fun to watch. So this scene worked for me, but I still think that it's overdone on the show. But it was fun to see the fast zombie and Daryl dodge his attacks and stuff. It didn't really seem like it made all that big of a difference that it was a fast zombie. The strength didn't seem to come into play. It just kind of felt like a normal zombie a little bit. I don't know, something a little off with that. But I like that Daryl had this axe before, and this axe, he thrusts it into the zombie's belly, and then acid starts leaking out. So I'm a bit confused here about the variants, because we had the acid variants, and then we had these fast zombies. So I thought that these were separate things. And now it seems like the fast zombies are the same thing. Now it makes sense, because in the first episode we saw the veins that the fast zombies grow when they get injected with this stuff. That they had the veins, but they didn't have the black eyes, I don't think. But now we got veins and black eyes. So I don't know if these acid zombies are separate or maybe they're created as well. But the ones we saw in the first episode weren't fast. So there's a disconnect there, something I would like to see explained I'm a little bit confused about. We'll just move past that right now, the confusion, but he skewers it and then it's burning his hand. So I like that, again, we're introducing this acid concept and then doing something with it. It's not enough for me to just have it as a novelty. I want it to be different than fighting a regular zombie in some way. So they did something with it. I like that. There's certain parts of this scene where I feel like the blood spatter should be a factor, like almost like the blood also has this acid in it, but maybe we'll get to that later, but not in this scene. I like that Daryl loses the axe because he can't touch it because it's burning him, and then he grabs a flag and then uses that. I love that. The only part that I thought was kind of silly was he skewers the zombie and then flips him over and then stabs him, and that just felt like the flags are in general kind of flimsy, right? So I don't know if it would have the strength to not break when you flip them around like that. So that's the one thing that just the nitpicker in me has to pick out. But other than that, it's a little quick for this fast zombie to be dispatched, but I thought it was an entertaining scene. It was fun. And then we bring in Quinn. And Quinn thinks at first that he and Daryl have to fight each other. They both get weapons, but then it turns out they're teaming up against zombies. So I wouldn't have assumed that, like, right away, oh, we got to fight each other now, because there's nothing that insinuated that, So I don't know. I would have just assumed, oh, we're going to be fighting zombies. But we got some drama tension between them at first. So we got zombies all around them, and I did enjoy the spotlights clicking on, the theatrical nature of it. And then here we get to see that the serum that they've been infecting zombies with is not perfected yet. And here we see a zombie that starts to ooze blood, and then his head explodes. So the villains don't have that figured out yet, but it's kind of strange that we've seen so many of these acid zombies around. So I would have thought that they had worked that out a little bit better, but I don't know. Maybe maybe there's an old version of the serum that was just the acid, and then the fast zombie part is the new thing. I don't know. I'm a little confused about it, but I'm probably overthinking it, as I typically do. The villains kind of are embarrassed by the serum not really working right. And I really enjoyed them using the chain in the fight, using that to trip zombies. And I thought it was very well staged as far as fights go on Walking Dead. And I like that we have a zombie with a metal head, so you can't just stab it really easily. So that was cool. So I thought they did some creative things with the fight in this. We've seen so many zombie fights. I love the chain twisted around the head. I swear we've done this before in the show somewhere, but it's still cool. I liked it. The scene was solid for me. And then the guards are going to shoot Daryl. They need to get it done with, and I like that Daryl gets the crowd on his side. The crowd, it's not so much that they want to see him dead specifically, because, like, the villain was trying to say, oh, he's a traitor, oh, he did all this stuff. The people didn't see what he did, right? So they don't really know. They just want to see some carnage, right? They just want to see a show. Daryl wasn't giving them that at first, and Daryl was dodging all the attacks, and they were kind of bored by it. They booed him, and then as the team up happens and they get some really great zombie kills in there, the crowd starts to turn to his side, and I think also the zombie's head exploding is a part of the crowd going on Daryl's side. It did seem a bit abrupt, but I think it works, And I love Daryl holding up the head as a trophy and throwing it at our main villains here. I thought that was a nice touch at the end. And then Daryl's about to get shot. Our main resistance guy, Fallow, he shoots off a little Uzi at the guard that's about to shoot Daryl. And then he tries to hide in the crowd. And then chaos ensues. People run out. It does, plot convenience that Daryl manages to get away just fine, part of me is like, it would have been so easy, like, to just shoot Daryl right then, but I guess, they have bigger priorities. I feel like you could have played that out in a way that made more sense. Maybe Fallow would have taken somebody hostage, one of the guards hostage, and they don't want to shoot him. And then, I don't know, maybe I'm just nitpicking a little bit, but part of me is just like, it would have been so easy to just shoot Daryl. But, not that I want that to happen, but I'm just saying. Here we got a scene with the lead antagonist, and she tells Cordon to go after Daryl and finally get his revenge. And that's setting up the rest of the episode there. We got Isabel and the kid locked in a cage, and part of me thinks that they would have just killed them already too, but I don't know. We need them to be alive, right? And the kid here, Laurent, is dealing with a crisis of faith, and the main villain says that God has abandoned you, and Laurent's kind of taking that as questioning at this point, which makes sense, and that's definitely what I think is realistic for a kid to think. Isabel manages to pickpocket the key to the cell from one of the guards. I didn't see it happen, but maybe if I played it back, I would notice. But part of me is like, wouldn't she have been tied up or something? Shouldn't she have been tied up? Shouldn't there be a guard at the prison cell? Because I know Daryl probably wants to come there eventually. You'd think that they would have left at least one guy behind, given that. But I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking it again. But it's kind of plot convenience stuff that adds up. And I notice it, but it doesn't really take away from my enjoyment of the episode, but it's just worth mentioning when I'm breaking stuff down here. And here we got a scene with Quinn, and Quinn is kind of getting his redemption moment here. He is about to die because it turns out he got bit on the back. He lies at first and says that it was a burn from the acid, but then it's kind of implied that it was actually a bite. And here he's kind of lamenting how he messed up with Isabel, and he's regretting what he failed to do. So I think that that's a good character moment for him, and he lets Daryl chop his wrist off because he can't detach the chain. So it's a nice self-sacrifice moment, and then the guards come, and then Quinn takes them out himself. And his final thoughts are of Isabel. So it's something, I feel that the weak point is Quinn of the season. The plot line with him and Isabel, I think, is the weak point. We talked about that last week. But I like how it ended up here, and he has a good death scene, so I appreciate that. And then Daryl manages to escape. It does feel convenient, but, again, I'm just repeating myself at this point. But then we meet up with the rest of the Resistance. They're gonna hotwire a car. I forgot to mention earlier, but the main villain was like, how did the Resistance get guns past the guards? They didn't explain that, so I'm curious how that happened. Was it the soldier that they killed at the garage that led that to happen? I don't know, but I'm assuming that's the case. So Daryl finds this locked gate, and Isabel and Laurent are on the other side, kind of mirroring the dream scene we got a few weeks ago. And then Quinn zombie comes back very conveniently, so I think that it was a bit quick for him to turn. Now, I get that the fast zombies turn faster, or at least that's what it was in World Beyond, although that kind of is retcon now, so I don't know if that really applies still. It's a bit quick, and he looks not as fresh as he should. So again, with the zombie makeup, I think there's a bit of a mistake there. But basically, Isabel gets pinned down. Laurent has to protect her. Daryl gives Laurent the weapon and then tells him to save her. And I like the idea of this scene. I like the idea that Laurent has been struggling with, sometimes he has to do unsavory things, and it is his father. So it's a serious thing. The execution of it, it's another instance in The Walking Dead where I don't think a child would realistically be able to do that. I don't think the child would have the upper body strength to go over his head like that and smash a skull in. Especially, like, you can forgive it for a zombie that's been around a long time and maybe the bones are a bit more brittle because of the decay and everything. This is a fresh zombie, just turned. I don't think this kid would realistically be able to penetrate the skull. It's something in Walking Dead we kind of just look past. We just treat the skull like butter, but when it comes to a kid, it doesn't look good. So that's the one thing. I love the idea of the scene. The execution could be a little better, in my opinion. So we have a goodbye scene here. The Resistance is separating off and going elsewhere. I don't know why the Resistance doesn't travel with them, or maybe there's just not room in the car, but part of me feels like they should stick together at this point. I don't know why the goodbye is necessary, but I don't know. Whatever, maybe I'm overthinking it again. We're on the road. Laurent has his scene where he says sometimes you have to do unsavory things, and I like that, learning from Daryl, and Daryl kind of completing his father figure journey. He tells Laurent something, Laurent accepts it into his own morality, and then he acts it out. So I think it was a good story arc there with Laurent. And then we have car trouble, and Daryl needs to fix the car. And here we get some backstory with Daryl. And it's cool talking about the history of these characters. It's kind of funny, we've been with these characters for so long, and we really know very little about pre-apocalypse. So I kind of enjoy these scenes where we're talking about their history and their family. Daryl talking about his dad not being around and being abusive, and he wouldn't feed them if they couldn't fix a car right. And then Daryl talks about his grandfather not being around, and that's part of why his father was the way that he was because of that. And his grandfather, turns out, was on the beaches of Normandy, like I said at the beginning, and he died out there. And I love that backstory, and its history repeating itself is a theme here. So, and that's a theme with a lot of families. A lot of times, children inherit the problems of their parents. So I love the substance of this conversation here. It's like a bonding moment, so I thought it was pretty solid writing here. Forgot to mention in this scene that Isabel reveals to Daryl that she lied to him about the drawing that Laurent did back at the Abbey. Laurent supposedly drew this drawing that predicted Daryl washing ashore, and she thought that would convince Daryl. I kind of like what Daryl says, but part of me doesn't really believe that Laurent wouldn't have mentioned at some point about the drawing. I don't think Laurent is really a liar. And setting up this relationship between Isabel and Daryl on mutual lying, they both lie to each other. I don't know that that's endearing us to them necessarily, but it made for a good scene. But they're kind of peeling back on the Laurent being the Messiah thing, which, as a grounded, realistic show that it is, makes sense to me. So I have mixed feelings on that revelation, but overall I thought this scene was pretty good. And then, of course, the villains catch up just in time, and Daryl is at gunpoint, and here Cordon is about to execute the child. The child is the first one that needs killing, according to the superior, and Cordon makes the decision that he's going to shoot his own allies instead. So they did no setup for this, so it just kind of felt very random. I do prefer this to how Fear the Walking Dead would have handled this situation. In Fear the Walking Dead, if this happened, Morgan would have taken the gun from him and managed to kill everybody somehow magically. So I prefer this to that, and maybe there just wasn't time to show us him showing some sympathy for the rebellion at some point. But he can't shoot the kid, and he decides not to kill Daryl either. So his motivation is a big question mark at this point. And then he goes back and he gets chastised later. So it just kind of comes off of him being kind of dumb. I don't know. I don't know. It's kind of weird to me, this whole situation. So I don't know. What do you guys think? That part was a bit questionable to me. And I'm cool with it. We aren't inside these characters' heads. We're only seeing them act stuff out. So I don't know. It's just a bit random to me. He was all about killing Daryl, and now all of a sudden he doesn't do it. I get he doesn't want to kill the kid, but he could kill Daryl though, right? I don't know. Something's off with that. They burn the car. The Cordon tells them to burn the truck, which is all well and good, but it still looks like the same truck, though. I don't know. They track the truck somehow. I don't know if that means GPS, but I'm assuming it's just like, it's a recognizable car that we know is ours. That's nitpicking at the end of the day. And then we go to the nest, and it's a very beautiful location. Absolutely love this. I love seeing all these cool locations in France. They're very beautiful, and the setting is one of the best things about the show. So I really appreciate it. And oh, and I forgot to mention Isabel gets stabbed in this ordeal. And then she's healing, and it's just kind of the full circle mirror image thing of the first episode, Daryl being injured by the burns, and now she's stabbed. And there's a scene where Daryl has to play the nurse with Isabel. And then Isabel comes out, and Daryl's teaching the kids how to shoot. And that's cool, and I just love these shots. And Daryl is having a meal with everybody, and he's bonding with Laurent. And we're setting up the conflict with Daryl that he wants to go back, but he feels torn. You know, he is starting to get feelings for Isabel, maybe, and he's definitely feeling that connection with Laurent. And he's torn. He wants to go home, but he wants to stay. And that's the big conflict for the rest of this episode. You know, here's the nurse scene. It's just a bonding scene. And then we got this other, I forget this guy's name, but we have the leader of the nest. He's from New York, and he came over as a student, and he's talking about how he believes in Daryl, and he's trying to convince Daryl to stay. He's saying that they need him, and I'm not sure that the Resistance really needs him. They seem to have a lot of people, one extra soldier. It's not make or break, but I think fine-tuning this dialogue would have been a little better, and just to emphasize that Laurent needs you. That's why we need you. We need you because Laurent needs you. You know, just a couple little tweaks would have made this better, but I like the concept. I gotta say, as a fan, I'm rooting for Daryl to go home. You know, I like Laurent and Isabel. I don't feel as invested as I feel invested in like the rest of our cast back home. So I'm personally rooting for Daryl to come home. So I don't know, maybe that means it didn't really work, or maybe that just means, you know, I'm not the right person to ask. I don't know. But here Cordon is chastised by the leader, and part of me feels like Cordon should have just abandoned them, or maybe he should have gone to the nest with them. He knows where the nest is. I forgot to mention that Cordon picks up a pocket watch thing that has the picture of the nest on it, so he knows where it is. And symbolically, that's like Daryl was given it as a symbol of Daryl getting faith, and giving it to Cordon is like the same kind of thing. So I like that we're imbuing these props with symbolism in that way. And it just feels like he's about to die here. I'm assuming he's not. I'm assuming something's going to happen. But it just kind of feels dumb that he would just come back, because she immediately susses out, you know, that he's lying. So at the very least, he could have like shot himself in the arm or something and shown that he got injured. Something like that, you know, I don't know. And then we got Daryl leaving. He's packing up to leave. He's got the boat to go to America. Isabel is upset with him for this, which is understandable. But at the end of the day, one thing that kind of bothered me with this is Daryl, you know, obviously she's saying Laurent looks up to you, you're like a father figure, and she brings up the repeating history thing with the father abandoning the kids, and that's in his past. It's kind of a low blow. I think it's kind of mean to say to Daryl, right? Because it's really not the same, because, you know, Daryl just met these people like a week ago, right? And I get that Laurent looks up to him, but also Daryl's got kids back home. Judith, RJ, they call him Uncle Daryl. They look up to him. Judith, in the last episode of the main show, it still kind of bothers me that she told Daryl, I didn't tell you that Michonne went to find Rick because I was afraid you would leave too. And then he does exactly what she's scared of. It never sat right with me that Daryl would do that, you know, and it would have been a great time to bring it up. There are kids back home that look up to me, and Laurent's not the only one. So I have a responsibility to those people. They do kind of say, you know, Daryl made a promise to them, so he does bring that up a little bit, but it just feels something missing from that scene. So he stops by Laurent's cot, and then he can't say goodbye to him, right? And then he leaves, and he walks, and he's going to the North Shore, and then he finds this grave site with American soldiers, and it's the beaches of Normandy. We find his grandfather's grave. This was a powerful scene. It really worked for me. I guess it should have been obvious that we were going to end up here. I didn't really know that this was a thing here, but it makes sense. And I thought, seeing the emotions on Daryl's face, I thought it was a good performance. It really worked for me. And then he sees the boat in the distance. The zombies come up out of the lurkers that come up out of the tunnels or something. And then it turns out Laurent followed him. And I'm not really sure the logistics of Laurent following him. You can't see him. My face is in the way, but there's Laurent. I'm not really sure how Daryl wouldn't have noticed that he's being followed. This kid, I don't think he's all that stealthy, right? And also, I guess maybe he was faking being asleep, and he actually knew Daryl was there. I don't know. It's a little convenient, but I get the point is that, he has to go back and save Laurent because there's all these zombies coming. He doesn't really have a choice because the writers know that Daryl would leave if he had the choice, but he's got to go back to save Laurent because Laurent cannot save himself. Even though he managed to kill one zombie, there's too many for just him to take care of. Ending on this is supposed to be, where will he go? Will he go back? Will he go with Laurent? We know there's a season 2. We know he's not going on the boat. So even if that wasn't the case, he's going to go back and save Laurent. So, and then this is when we get the scene with Carol, which is a fun little scene. Carol finds this guy with Daryl's bike, and she tries to stop him. And they end up in an altercation. Carol ends up taking him out. And she interrogates him and finds out, where Daryl ended up. It's a little convenient that she just happened to run into him, but, she's in the right area. But that's one thing with this franchise is they don't really acknowledge how big the world is, Like, yeah, she knows the general vicinity of the area in Maine, but I don't know. It's very lucky to run across this guy, but it was a fun scene. I really love at the end when she's like, if you're lying, I won't come back to you. That was awesome. And I'm just happy Carol's back in the show. And that's pretty much all I have to say about it. Really excited about season 2. I'm excited for the franchise going forward. I think between Dead City and this, we've got something worth watching for longtime fans. And if it comes down to the Rick show has to be better than this, even though I like this show. The Rick show has to be as good as The Walking Dead at its peak in order for the franchise to fully be revived, because I think that show has a really good chance of bringing people back who kind of gave up on the show after a while if word of mouth is good on that show. So that's what I'm hoping for. But this is better than it's been. It's better than World Beyond. It's better than Dead City. It's definitely better than Fear of the Walking Dead is now. So I'm excited about it. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section, and thanks for checking this episode out with me today. And with that, it's been your boy Shuggy, and unfortunately we're back with Fear of the Walking Dead next week. But I'll be here suffering through it for you guys, for your entertainment, and I hope to see you guys there. So with that, it's been your boy Shuggy. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching, everybody. Peace out.